The 68 Custom Vibrolux Reverb Amp by Fender is a great tribute to a classic look and sound from Fender in the late 60s. This is the silver face era. Now, this is not exactly as the original amp was. In this amp, we have two channels, the vintage channel, which is the Vibrolux channel, and the custom channel, which is a modified Bassman channel. What makes this different? Well, both channels have reverb and tremolo, which is not what it was in the original. But probably more importantly, the custom channel has a slightly more modern feel and tonal flexibility, which is great with pedals. The amp has also been tweaked to provide overdrive earlier on in the volume range, and reduced negative feedback gives greater touch sensitivity. The amp is a 2x10 inch, which you may not be expecting if you don't know these amps. A lot of attention has been paid by Fender to give this a real vintage feel. So from the rectifier sag that gives it a vintage tonal character, to the hand-wired tube sockets and the original Schumacher transformers that have been used, to the tube-driven grid bias tremolo, which they call vibrato, which is the real proper tube sort of tremolo that we have known and loved from Fender for years. The amp has 35 watts of output power. Once you get above volume 4, it becomes pretty uncomfortable for bedroom use, I would say, and once you get above 5.5, it's uncomfortable for home use. That's my honest opinion, but we'll talk about that more in a moment. This is a 2.6L6 output amp with 412 AX7s and 212 AT7 preamp tubes. The second input on each channel gives you a slightly lower output. The amp comes with a foot switch, which looks the part but feels very cheap. On the other hand, this may be an original character that I don't know, because I've never played with an original one. The amp looks gorgeous. It's incredibly light, smaller than I imagined. It's not very deep. So perfect for carrying around to gigs. And talking of gigs, the volume here would definitely be enough for a small to medium sized club. But it's yet to be seen whether the tone holds up to being pushed really loud above about 7 on the volume, because every time I try, my ears start hurting. Hi guys, James here, thanks for coming to watch, and today I am reviewing the Fender Custom Vibrolux amp, which you will have seen in the intro there. If you're interested in this amp, it probably means that you are after something with a vintage character. But what I think is most important about this amp is actually it's really quite flexible. So it has the look and appeal of the silver face amp, and it gives you the silver face character in one of its channels. But Fender have been quite clever here to basically make this into a great all-round gigging amp, because it has the other channel, the custom channel, which is got a more modern sort of tonal sensibility about it, slightly less of the very specific sort of Vibrolux silver face sound from the 60s, and it works better with pedals. It overdrives a bit more quickly. the only thing that I would say about that is, personally, I bought the amp for its vintage character, so I really just use the vintage section at home. If I was to gig, because we can't right now, if I was playing out, I'd probably have more use for the other channel. But as it comes to it at home, I don't, particularly because I'm trying to hone the character that I want from a Fender 68, Silverface Vibrolux. So that flexibility is slightly lost on me, but it's certainly very useful and appreciated, and I think it was a good idea from Fender. The amp is light, it's small, so it really is great for gigging, and it has that sort of medium power, medium feel to it that, if you go for one of the twins, which, are so much more powerful and much, much heavier, that can be a real struggle. And I think in realistic terms for most people, 35 watts, which this is more than enough for most situations. And I can tell you, this amp does not hold back in the way it delivers on that volume. It has a gradual increase in volume throughout, whereas some amps will give you a lot of the volume at the beginning and then compress a lot as it goes on. This really doesn't do that until right at the end, but it can be quite uncomfortable in a small space. Bear in mind that Fender amps like these have a real sort of tonal character with that more high and low end, and this one, it really has a lot of high end that it can catch in a room and reverberate, and it can hurt. So I'm finding that I'm going for those silky tones you get in the sort of 3 to 5 volume range, which is not uncomfortable on the ears, but still pretty loud. That means I'm not using the amp for sort of lush, overdriven tones, which I would say the Vibrolux, that's not what its specialty is. That's not what it's really there for. I think it's a great rhythm player's amp. If you're playing funk blues, you know, that sort of thing, this is probably that sort of amp. If you're after more alternative sort of sounds and clean sounds, I think that could probably work as well. So what is, if anything, would I point out more from here? Well, great flexibility using the speed and intensity from the vibro, the vibrato, sorry. Vibrato is an effect that I absolutely love, so that's the reason I bought this amp over some of the other choices that I had. The reverb is good. It's a little bit over the top. I've got used to really high-end reverb sounds coming from my 2-Rock and my Tone King amps, and those really feel integrated into whatever you're playing, whereas this actually feels a little bit like it's just producing echoey sounds. I will demo that as well, just so you can see what you think, but that's just how I feel about it. The bright switch, I'm not a bright switch sort of person. I find that a bit like that, you know, like running your nails down at a board. It has its place, and I think some people can really make the most of it. Me personally, not so much. I like to roll my tone off a bit anyway, so adding the bright switch wouldn't really make much sense for me. And as I said before, I don't use the custom channel a lot, so, but you know, I think a lot of people would find it useful for pedals. And again, in the demo, we'll just do a quick switch, same pedal on at the same level. We'll go between the two channels and you can see. So let me just give my conclusion before the demo. If you're in the market for the classic Fender sound, then I would probably go for a deluxe reverb blackface. And I think that's the sound a lot of people have in their head. This actually, though, can be a bit more specialist. And if you're after that very silky sound, then great. That silky rhythm sound and the great tremolo that you've got. Whereas a deluxe reverb will probably give you a slightly fatter, more luscious sound. And if you're after a Stevie Ray Vaughan sort of sound, then that's what you can get out of that other amp. This is not a cheap amp by any stretch. Now, it's not quite up in that boutique level of price. This was about £1,300. I'd say, personally, I feel like it cost a bit more than it should have done. But, you know, amp prices are what they are now, and I've obviously paid a lot more for other amps. This fits a hole in my collection. It gives me that late 60s Fender sound, which I was interested in. So in that sense, I think it's great. It's not the best build quality, as I said, but it's very light. And I think the two, it feels a little bit less strong than some of my amps. When you're sort of pulling the speaker cable in and out, you can feel the thing moving and you just worry. And I probably will cut it out of the demo because it's not fair on the amp. My speaker cable was sort of cutting in and out a little bit when I pushed the volume really high, but then I've pulled the speaker cable in and out quite a few times to use it with an attenuator, so I probably just hadn't seated it properly. So I don't think it's a problem with the amp. And once I then went behind and figured that out and pushed it in properly and sort of squeezed it in, it hasn't happened again. So I'll probably leave that out, but just so you know, some of the parts are not the best, and the pedal has a sort of cheap feeling to it, easily broken. I'm hoping they sell those separately anyway, because you might lose it. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else I need to mention, other than if you're just after that specific Fender sound that's in your head, this may not be that amp, and I would urge you just to listen to the demo I've done and other people, because you're probably after a blackface Fender sound. Now, if that sounds like a load of rubbish to you, then that means you know more than I do already, and you know that you want this Silverface late 60s amp. This is just my subjective opinion. This is not the Fender sound, that's all I would say, and I think you're probably after a deluxe reverb. And that's an amp that I'm hoping to get one day as well. So all in all, a good package, well made, well thought out, pretty impressive stuff. I'm very happy with it. I'm not sure it's an amp I'll keep forever. It doesn't feel like it sort of solidified a hole in my heart. I think people love those blackface Fender amps more than these silverface ones. That's what I've gathered, and I can sort of see why. It's a little bit underwhelming in places. I can't quite reach the tones that I thought I would, even using my Tube Screamer or my Dualist pedal, which normally brings out the best tone in anything. So I would just say this isn't the catch-all Fender amp, and so if that's what you're after, keep looking, as I am. So just to say, if you've enjoyed this and you think it's useful, please give the video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for your support so far. And if you've been watching my videos and haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and just so that you'll see when my new videos come up. But anyway, thank you for watching. Let's go on into the demo, and I'll see you next time.